I hope everybody enjoyed their coffee break and had a chance to meet some of the other people around today. I would like to invite up our first panel on scaling sustainable agriculture. Please, guys, come on up to the stage. Nicely labeled name tags. I assume these are on. Hello? Yeah. So for our first panel, I want to start out, I think we heard this morning from Colin, and I think we all know that there's great potential in the market, in the sector, and that there are a lot of potential solutions. But why I'm so excited about this panel is that these are four people who are actually out in various stages putting these solutions into practice. And I thought it would be great to hear from each of them about what they're doing, and then to have a conversation about some of the challenges and opportunities that they're facing as they do it, and maybe some things that we all can do to help grow their businesses and businesses like them as well, because there could be some opportunities for that. So I'd like to start out and just have everybody take 4 or 5 minutes to talk about who they are and what their business is. And I'd like to start with Thaddeus.
Great. How's everyone doing this morning? Good. So my name is Thaddeus Barsotti, and my perception of reality growing up was, I grew up on a 20-acre organic farm near Davis, was that agriculture meant you grew as many things as you possibly could with the seasons, you harvested them, and you sold them directly to the end user, whether that was a restaurant or individual customers at farmers markets. And that's how I grew up. It wasn't until I got to, I studied ag engineering at Cal Poly, when I realized that that is so far from the reality of agriculture. And what our company does, Farm Fresh to You, we're completely vertically integrated farm-to-table food system. So I'm managing a farm, 600 acres, about 150 people on the farm. We're managing 60 different commodities, 120 different varieties. We're also distributing through Farm Fresh to You about 25,000 deliveries per week of boxes of fruits and vegetables right to your doorstep. Any Farm Fresh to You customers in here? 1, great. 2, check it out. And really what our company's learned to do is agriculture is a process, and our farm represents a different process, and our consumers are asking for a different process. And so when you look at what we're doing, we're saying, hey, we can take local agriculture and produce more things locally than any other farm, but there has to be a market for it. And we do that by making a partnership through our Farm Fresh to You customers, where we ask them, what do you want? What don't you want? This is what our seasonal menu is, and we're going to make it very easy for you to do this. You just have to sign up, give us your credit card, and we're going to take care of all the details. And to do that, we have distribution facilities in Northern California and West Sacramento that serves Northern California. We started down in Los Angeles about 3 years ago, so we have a new distribution center in Vernon. I'm sourcing probably 1,500 acres of product total. 600 acres I grow. The other balance comes from a variety of different farms. And we have a very, I think, an okay website, but we're striving for a piece of technology that really is going to put the power of the process into you as the consumer. So that's what I do. I'm looking forward to talking with everyone. Thank you.
Great. Dan?
Hi, good morning. Basically what we've done, Hometown Farms is an urban farming operation, but really what's kind of unique about Hometown Farms is really we've created a unique model, and really kind of taking existing technologies, existing systems, and then just changing them around. And so really what Hometown Farms is kind of a combination of 4 components. What we figured out, well, the 4 components is high efficiency growing systems that are used outside the city on millions of acres all over the world currently. We've reduced those systems down, moved them into the city, and then once they're into the city, which is the second component, it's direct to consumer sales, whether that's wholesale or retail. And then the last component is growing a basket of products, not just 1 or 2. Because if you're in the city, a lot of people, a lot of businesses or people don't want to stop just to buy 1 or 2 items. They will. I mean, strawberry stands and other things like that prove that they will. But they would really prefer a basket. So we grow 20, 30 different varieties at one location. It helps in twofold. One is that people will want to come and visit you because they can get most of their produce there. But the most important thing is that the more of you grow in one particular item, the farther your distribution footprint is. So really, we've set up the farm to grow just enough of each item in order to keep the distribution within about 5 miles. So just kind of summarize, it's high efficiency, vertical growing systems that utilize airspace, move them into the city, direct-to-consumer sales with the right mix of produce that doesn't allow you to have to distribute your product more than 5 miles. So that's really the crux of hometown farms. Where there's a major benefit is that these high-efficiency farming systems save on average about 85% of the water, 80% of the fertilizer. Since you're in the city already, you reduce the fuel consumption by about 90%, and subsequently the carbon output associated with that's the same 90%. And then you can grow the same amount of produce on about 1/7. So for every acre you grow, it's equivalent of growing approximately 7 acres. Depends on the plant. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower. So that's pretty much hometown farms.
Great. Casey?
All right. Well, thank you for having me here today. I hope I can add some value to each one of you. We're an operation that is somewhat different from what you've heard so far today. We're more of a commercial scale, larger facility, but yet a lot of similarities between what you would talk about the hometown farming, or what Colin had said this morning. You'll see in our facility. I'm actually a Canadian. I live in Canada, and the reason I'm down here is because we don't have enough light there in the wintertime. So in 1996, we moved part of our facility down to Camarillo. We now have 125 acres of greenhouses in California compared to our 50 acres up in Canada. And now what we do there is our primary crop is tomatoes. And over the years, I've been doing this for some 35 years. Started initially in floral under my dad and worked through him, and just continued to go forward. And the further I got in this ag sector, the more I learned kind of to the contrary of what you just heard. But there's not any real rules in this business. I mean, what works for one doesn't work for another. I went more in the direction of doing less products and becoming better and producing them more efficiently. The more you do, you tend to you get a little more watered down. It gives you inability to become more efficient and everything else. Now, what the beauty of our location in Camarillo is that we're within a population of 12.5 million people. So theoretically, we wouldn't have to ship a single tomato outside of a 100-mile range to get them all consumed here. We're doing a lot more to try and get that done. We haven't achieved those kind of goals yet, just because Los Angeles is a very difficult produce market. For those of you who don't know, it's kind of the last place where excess product's going to go. It's a big market, so if people that produce it, primarily Mexican product, comes across the border, it doesn't have a home, it ends up in LA. So LA has the lowest produce prices in North America. As a result, those are some of our challenges, which means that a lot of our product doesn't stay local. We are gaining ground. We need to do a much better job at selling what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. So now I'll go to a little bit more of our process. So we grow tomatoes in a greenhouse. What's so unique about that? It's not really all that unique. It's done all over the world, but we do it differently. Maybe I'll just say a little bit about the philosophy of our company, first of all. I often tell everyone, first thing we do is grow tomatoes. We do it well. Second thing we do is make money so we can grow tomatoes. And I think that's a big difference in the philosophy. What that does is that means you take pride in what you do, and you're not going to turn around and sell it off to the first private equity firm that wants to buy your company or anything else like that. We've also got 750 employees. And I think we within our company hold a responsibility to those employees. They helped us build the company to where it is today. They take pride in what they do. We want them to take pride in what they do. We all spend far too much time at work not to enjoy it, so we want everyone to enjoy it. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's tough. But at the end of the day, that's what we achieve to do in our company. The other thing we put a lot of emphasis on was energy consumption. We're probably one of the most energy efficient greenhouse production facilities in the world. We get people from all over the place come to see us, even from countries such as Holland, which is the Silicon Valley of the greenhouse industry. We've patented some of our technology, and we sell it out throughout the world. What do? We do simple things, first of all. When we install electrical motors, we use technologies such as EC motors, which use half the amount of power. We put insect screens on or preventative stuff on greenhouses so we don't have to use as many pesticides, keep the bugs out. Then we use hydroponics. We recycle all our water, so we use less than 1/6 of the amount of water that field guys use, and that's also some higher level technology. The other thing, in our cooling facility, when we cool down the tomatoes to send them to the markets so that they have longer shelf life, we extract the heat out of that and we put it into large storage tanks and use it to heat the greenhouses at night. We do that with our irrigation water. The higher irrigation water temperatures go, the lower the oxygen content comes, so you want to keep your water cooler. So we cool the water down, we extract the heat out of that. We've got 1 meg of solar thermal. We've got another meg of PV solar, just all to try and reduce our energy. We've done all those kind of things within our facility, not from only economic reasons, but we've done it because we wanted to do something that other people haven't done. The other thing I've done, this is the last big one we've done just recently, and it's kind of sat in my craw for a long time. One thing we do here is we talk about solar, we talk about renewable energies and everything else, but what are we very, very bad at here in America? That's wasting energy. We waste more energy every day than we could even hope to generate through solar or wind farms or anything else. If you take, for example, when we produce electricity out of natural gas, the 2 biggest waste products out of those facilities is heat and carbon dioxide. That, in our facility, is the 2nd and 3rd largest cost behind labor. So one person's waste we have to generate on our own. We went out and we did something about it. We tried to put a facility next door to a P&G plant and extract the heat, the waste heat and the CO2 out of it. But we weren't successful. So finally what we did was we decided we were going to put in our own electrical generating facility and export the electricity and strip the heat off it and the CO2 off it and use it in-house. So that's the last one we did. We're investing about $17 million in that facility, and I think you'll hear a little bit more of some of the challenges we've had to go through that. We're very proud of what we do, and I've taken too long. Okay, next.
My name is Miguel Jardine. I am based in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm very thankful, actually, that this conference is here in LA because I've needed to get the heck out of the valley. The desert is very, very hot, and this particular summer was very much so. We're still at 90 degrees, so it's cool here. So VermiSoks, and you'll hear a lot more throughout the day, especially towards the end of the day when I give a pitch, but VermiSoks was essentially designed from the ground up to take advantage of a huge opportunity in the food industry, and that is the food waste. In the United States, we're looking at about 40%. In Phoenix, we generate 1,400 tons of food waste every day. Most businesses just consider that to be the cost of doing business. It's never recovered, and the waste just finds its way into a landfill where it generates a lot of greenhouse gases. So I developed the VermiSoks virtuous cycle, and it's a process by which we collect that food waste. And we can handle all kinds of food waste. It's not just produce, it's meat, it's bones, it's seafood, it's the enchilada you may have had yesterday, dairy products, baked goods, all of that comes to our facility. We call that the VermiSoks wine cellar because that's where we make worm wine, and the worm wine is the liquefaction of all of that waste that then gets drip irrigated into VermiSoks. And those are mesh tubes, 3 feet long. They're filled with earthworms and ground up coconut husks. And the earthworms eat all of that, and they convert that into a very nutrient-rich soil. This has essentially enabled us to create a portable organic growing platform. We have it in our parking lot. It doesn't require any preparation of the soil. So this is a new way of dealing with the waste, turning it into something useful, growing organic produce. And I always forget to tell this part. So the garden doesn't require any watering because everything is fed from the worm wine. So we have that waste doing something very beneficial. It's feeding the earthworms, it's providing moisture for other plants to grow, and it's creating an incredible soil. So we consider this to be pretty much the next generation solution to our food waste problems. We don't necessarily believe that we have to, I don't know, don't take away my environmentalist card on this one, but we don't think that it's a matter of conservation. It's smarter use of our resources. And waste is produced from growing, the vine that the tomato grew on. That goes right into the virtuous cycle process to grow more tomatoes, which I think is super cool, and we do so with far less water. But with that said, huge supporter of all other growing mechanisms, hydroponics, aquaponics, in-ground growing. It's all part of the solution. It's all necessary. I consider VermiSoks to sort of be the catfish of the agricultural space, because whatever's left over, we'll take it and we'll turn that into something that you can use. So that's VermiSoks. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So obviously, a diversity of approaches, a diversity of types of businesses, all great ideas, all very compelling ideas. But there are some people that say, when we talk about new ideas and innovation in the space, they say, well, we can't scale it. We can't make it big enough. We can't feed the world. There's going to be 9.5 billion people by halfway through the century. There's 70% more food demand. How do we communicate? Do these scale? Do these approaches scale? Do they work together? And I want to start and actually ask you specifically, Thaddeus, because you have a vertical model that you're doing. What are the limits to how big you can get? And what are the challenges you face in order to do that?
Right, so that's a great question. The first thing we have to understand is how agriculture works today. And the way farms work is they're good at doing one thing. And if I'm a lettuce grower, that's what I do. I grow lettuce. I'm the best at it in the world. And in order to do that, I start in Salinas. And then when it's too cold, it gets too cold about November, December, I move my operation to Yuma. I'm there for the winter, and then on my way back up to Salinas, I stop in Holtville, and then I'm back in Salinas. And from my customer's point of view, I can see that I'm getting, they're just getting lettuce every year. So for us to feed the world, two things need to happen. The first thing is we need to eat less meat. When we talk about what agriculture does, most commodity agriculture, like up in Yolo County where I am, we're raising alfalfa to feed to animals, which are then making food. However, we can, on those alfalfa fields, grow a huge selection of local vegetables. But in order for that to work, that selection of local vegetables has to be something that fits with nature. So in the spring, our diets around that region need to focus on mixed vegetables. We need to eat tomatoes and melons and peppers in the summer. And when summer turns to fall, we need to forget the tomatoes and peppers and melons and switch back into vegetables and enjoy the chards and kales and then roll back into the spring vegetables. And if society adopts this model, then we're able to use ground that's currently not producing very much food to create lots and lots of healthy food and deliver it locally. And that's really, and in order to do that, the food system has to be completely vertically integrated. And when I say that, for a farmer to do something that risky, to grow 120 different varieties and have an idea of when that bok choy is going to be ready, but not grow too much bok choy because everybody gets tired of bok choy after 4 straight weeks, you have to have, right? Not enough Farm Fresh customers in here to laugh at me. You have to know that your consumer is committed to that process. And when the consumer commits to that process and says, hey, yes, this is how we want to feed ourselves, then you're empowering that food system to do what it needs to do. And we can feed the world that way. And you look at all of the agriculture that's been lost, east of the Mississippi. Why is that? That's because everybody's focusing on the product the 52 weeks of supply of fresh product that comes out of the Southwest, out of California, and we've lost the ability to produce fresh fruits and vegetables for that maybe 3-month window of time when they're really good at it, because we're just paying attention to the price and not the process.
So another issue that seems to come up when everybody talks is the allocation of capital. Now Dan, you're sort of a serial entrepreneur, if I call you that. You've worked in a lot of different businesses. You've worked in solar. You've worked in other areas. When you talk to investors, you're currently raising money right now for Hometown Farms, or it sounds like you've basically done raising your money. What were the challenges getting all of that capital raised, and how were investors looking at sustainable agriculture as compared to other businesses that you'd look to build?
Sure. Raising capital in this environment, no matter what business you're in, is extremely tough in today's world. It kind of almost dovetails from what we were just talking about scalable models. And so really, I think the greatest challenge I had was showing that the model was scalable. For what I'm trying to do, we need to buy these high-efficiency growing systems, the same kind Casey has and some others, and we need to take those expensive systems and bring them down. We're running, probably about $1 million to $1.5 million per acre, and that's with construction costs, operating everything to get it up and going. So really, it was going to the investors to show them that was scalable. The issues that I had personally with my business was that nobody believed that you could grow produce within the city and actually make it economically viable. Everybody's, if you have food in the city, it's victory gardens, it's community gardens, it's that type of things, which, again, almost like you were saying, Miguel, I agree. Every form of farming is needed. This doesn't replace anything. But if you grow traditionally within the city, it's not economically viable. So in order to do something of the scale that we need to do in order to feed the masses, I had to prove that point. Mm-hmm. So it really was building that model for the investment community to believe it. And really the biggest crux is a lot of people, well, what are you going to grow? What can be grown? And really, for our particular model, it's vegetables and berries. So leafy, vegetable, and berries are things that are economically viable. The reason that works, and this kind of is part of it, I think, because again, raising your money doesn't go out and say, give me money. You got to go out and show and prove your model and prove the reasons why it's going to work. So really what we did is we broke down the farming system. Mm-hmm. And we said, okay, who's making money in this system? And on average, and these are Walmart numbers, so give or take a little bit, but it gives you a basis of what goes on. Basically, you have the farmer who ends up with about 10 cents out of the dollar. Ridiculous. The people who touch it between the farmer get approximately about 60 cents out of every dollar, and then the retailer ends up with about 30 cents out of every dollar. So again, and those numbers vary a little bit. So what we found is by showing them that we are the entire supply chain, by building a farm within the city, mm-hmm. you're able to be the farmer, the distributor, and the retailer. And with that ability, basically what you're capturing, which is the most important part, is the distribution part. So we calculated that we could distribute our produce for about 10 cents on the dollar versus the current 60 cents. So you take that 50 cents out of the supply chain. Then on top of that, by using these high efficiency growing systems and yielding, and it varies on what crop you're growing, you're going to yield anywhere from about 500,000 pounds per acre versus 20 to 40,000 of what a traditional farmer grows. So a lot of raising money in today's environment for how hard it is really honing in on your business model and really showing people that you can make it happen. And then on top of that, it's finding the customers that'll buy it, which Casey was talking about is the hardest thing. And part of the difficulties of moving a farm into the city is that aspect of getting the customers, the bigger customers that want to buy the volume. Am I going a little long, or am I okay?
No, you're all right.
So what happens with a lot of the larger customers is that they don't want to buy from little individual farms because they don't want to buy just one or two items from them. It makes it very difficult for their purchasers. So they either have to go to a broker who puts together a dozen different local farmers, or they have to deal with all the individual farmers. So the broker makes it too cost prohibitive, mm-hmm. and the individual farmers just make it too much for them to do. Mm-hmm. So to raise the capital, you really got to hone your model and really prove that you have that whole supply chain done.
So speaking of getting it done, so we've got the finance part of it. Now, Casey, you've been doing this on a big scale for a while, and we've talked. We were at I had the opportunity to go to the unveiling of the cogeneration facility, which was incredibly impressive, and we talked about some of the challenges. It seems so obvious, not that it's easy to do, but once you lay out what you're doing and high efficiency growing systems, cogeneration, using less water, increasing yield in per acre, it all seems very obvious, yet it's not easy to do. Why is that?
Well, I guess one of the first thing I would say was a comment made this morning about a farmer. Some of them aren't that smart. Some of them, they want to just farm, grow the stuff and ship it outside, and people are obliged to buy it. Those days are done. And what makes it very, very challenging, because I love farming, but not only do I need to know how to farm, I need to know how to manage staff, I need to know how to deal with all the regulations that come with it, and then I need to know how to be more energy efficient. So I need a little bit of engineering knowledge so that I don't go buy something that doesn't work properly. Then I got to think about all the processes we're doing. So it's a huge task to do what we're doing, because you need to know so much about everything. Once you kind of get to that point, and I've been blessed with a lot of good staff that have helped me, and a lot of friends that I've been able to leverage it off, because I'm not, I wouldn't consider myself as being a high IQ person by any means. I quit school when I was 15, so I don't have a secondary education or anything else, but I listen. And by that, I've learned a lot from a lot of other people. And the other thing is, you gotta have guts. Because if you don't have guts and you don't dare to take chances, you're done. If you need to calculate everything out on a paper and be absolutely sure that it's going to work, that a bug's not going to eat what it is, that the consumer's going to buy you what you want, that you don't have a retailer that's going to drop you at a certain time, you don't even start. Because it really is something that takes guts. I know from experience. I've sat there one night, looked at the balance sheet, didn't look very good, and I said, you know what, God, I'm going to do the best I can, and the rest is up to you. And I can live with it. It's something you have to live with. Because, I got 3 daughters, I got a wife. They need education, they need food, and they need horses. And horses are expensive. But now, so that's where I got there. But what is the most frustrating thing is when you go out and you do something like we're doing on this cogeneration facility. It's the most efficient electrical generating plant in the U.S. today. And you know what? You know how much money it's generating? A negative $16,000 a day. You know why? Because I can't export electricity because of the regulatory environment. If you see the forms we have to fill out, the timelines, the efficiency models, and the 4 different government organizations behind the hundreds of people, we have spent over $500,000 on engineers alone just to be able to comply with regulatory requirements. When you go into the county and you tell the county what you're doing, they say, ooh, never seen one of those before. Oh, we can't touch that. So what you need to do, you need to hire a consultant. Another $100 grand down the tube, because they don't want to take any risk. And it goes on and on and on. I could spend a long time talking about it. But why is it costing us $16,000 a day? Because we're 18 months behind schedule. Because if we got to get Edison to change the wires on the road, because we need to be able to export 13.2 megawatt, and I'm just going to zero in on probably one of the most foolish things I've ever heard in my life, is they wanted a bond of $5 million to do environmental impact study on increasing the wire size on existing power lines going through agricultural land that goes to the nearest substation. Wasn't on our model or anything else. So then what you got to do? Then you got to go to Sacramento. You got to lobby over there. You got to do all the other kind of things that take you away from your business. And that's what hurts the most. When you want to be a farmer, you can't be a farmer. You got to be a businessman. You got to know how to lobby. You got to do everything else. And I've spoken on this before. I probably said a few things that a lot of people didn't want to hear, and I'll just mention a few of them again. We're in trouble here in America because the bureaucracy and the regulatory environment has taken control. And I don't believe there's a lot of politicians out there that have the guts to fix it. And it needs to be fixed. If we want to produce food, we want to do it efficiently, and we want to use less energy, we need the ability to get out there and do it. And when we've got to spend $17 million, like what we're spending on this cogeneration thing, it's all sitting there and it's just weight sitting on the ground, it really frustrates you. Because guess what? Tomato prices are real low this year. I can't afford to be pumping another $16,000 a day into this thing. I got to leave this conference today early because I got to go and do some more lobbying because I got to get this thing done. I need to do that for our employees. I need to do that for our company. And that's very, very frustrating.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with him more. Part of the whole thing about changing this system is the politicians. And I spent over a year working with the politicians in San Diego to finally get a new code passed called Retail Farm. Without that, we are so limited in what we could do. So really a lot of this change is doing exactly what Casey's talking about, and that's we got to get to our politicians. So if there's anything that really comes out of this whole thing, it's all of us really starting to write letters, make phone calls, and tell them that we want this local movement to happen, and we've got to get the pieces into play.
Great.
Add one thing to that.
Yeah, please.
Just piggybacking on that, if people fully understand the food safety requirements that are coming down the line for all of these farms, and the system's ignorance about that it's not a one model fits all farms, when these things come and they're being expected of small farms, and my farm just went through this, so I know all about it. There's a stack of binders this tall, and I have 3 full-time people on my staff that just deal with this stuff. We're asking too much. Politicians are asking too much from these farmers, and it's exactly what Casey said. I'm not a farmer. I spend all my time dealing with all this other stuff, but where we need to be is we need to be freed up to focus on actually producing products for people to eat.
Miguel, do you actually deal with, I know you have a point you want to make, but I would imagine getting the post-consumer, the food waste flow, that puts you right in the middle of public policy debates as well.
So, all right, now you can start with all the jokes about Arizona because they're all true, really. Arizona is, forget California. Arizona is the Wild West, and I've taken to the old saying of it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. I initially went to deal with the city and just where could we put our facility. And at the end, they ended up sticking us right in between a chemical processor, distributor, a stonemason, and a junkyard. And when people come to visit us, they're like, where the heck are you? And then they walk onto our property and they see all of this green stuff growing, and they're like, how did this show up here? So the virtuous cycle is as much a model of collaboration as it is a description of our business. And I work tirelessly. Okay, sometimes I get tired. I work often on getting other people involved and participating in it. Distribution of the food is a huge component. Cisco was working with Michigan State, and Michigan State had a basil farmer about 5 miles away, and they said, hey, we really want that basil. Cisco took 3 years to figure out how to get that basil 5 miles to their customer. That's what the... Anyway, I don't want to solve that problem. I've got other problems to solve. And so I spend a lot of time reaching out. The politicians will do what you tell them to, And it's what's in their best interest. So right now, for instance, in Phoenix, a book came out that essentially said that Phoenix is the least sustainable city in the world. And our new mayor, Greg Stanton, is looking at this and he's like, okay, how do we reverse that? And the way that we reverse that is people trying new and innovative things and seeing what sticks. And so we've been very fortunate at VermiSoks to get the support of the local politicians. And they're saying, again, I don't know how long this is going to last, but I can try basically anything. I've gotten away with doing a lot of different things. And most of the time, I don't tell them what I'm doing until it's done. And then I bring them over and I'm like, this is how this is going to benefit you. We talk about local economic development. They're all over that. VermiSoks, our wine cellar is actually in South Phoenix, which is a food desert. And if you're not familiar with that term, that essentially it's a low-income neighborhood that doesn't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. It also doesn't have access to very good jobs. And in Phoenix, it's also where a lot of vacant lots reside. So in going into that community, setting up our facility, growing in our parking lot, using our system, we're now able to bring the politicians and say, okay, you want economic development, you want jobs, you want public health, here's how you do it. And they're looking at that and they're like, okay, so what do you need? So I totally echo Casey. It takes guts. And sometimes that guts is not just to persevere in dealing with the existing system, but literally step out of that system, create another one, and then invite them to come and play.
That's great. So we have about 5 minutes more before we go to questions from the audience. But I wanted to ask, we've talked about some of the challenges. We've talked about some of the great things that are happening. If there were ways to move around the systematic impediments that we're dealing, a lot of which seem to be not necessarily malicious in their intent, but sort of just bureaucracies that move slowly and ignorance, are there big opportunities? Are there massive opportunities in this space that, if we could clear away some of the rubble, could make a big difference? Casey you look thoughtful, Casey.
Well, there certainly is. I mean, I could mention a couple right now. We're looking at possibly doing something in Alaska. Why Alaska? Because they generate electricity there. They got waste heat and waste CO2. So we could be producing right up there in Alaska to feed 700,000 people that live up there that right now get everything barged up from Seattle. So, you cut down the shelf life you're going to add to the shelf life by probably 10 or 12 days of what you're going to take out of it. And they're going to have great tasting food. And that's one of the things we want to do. Another opportunity would be to set up in Utah next to another electrical generating plant.
Sure.
Those opportunities are there, but one of the challenges there is you need staff to manage them. And the more places you are, the more places you have to be, the more difficult it becomes. Nutrition is something that we're quite interested in and improving it. We're also doing a project in Guatemala to help those people over there, the fourth highest country in the world of malnourishment, in a place where it doesn't need to be. So you got to get back too. I mean, that's part of what we're doing just on the side note. So.
Right. Thaddeus, is there a...
Yeah, there's a big one. There are millions of really hardworking agricultural workers that are providing us cheap food. And the notion that the country doesn't need a guest worker program and something that enables people who want to work hard and provide to society and be able to have a driver's license and know what's going to happen to them is something that we absolutely need. And it's a topic that most farmers don't want to talk about, but it's, I know it to be fact, and it's simple to do. Why it hasn't been done, I don't know.
And like the economics, I mean, let's look at the economics of food. It's just like energy. We need it. And actually, it's more important. We can get cold and put clothes on. We got to eat. So we don't get around that. We import billions and billions of dollars of food. So between the types of farming that everybody's doing on the panel here, we can bring so many jobs back. I mean, we have traditional farming, which employs a tremendous amount of people, and again, almost get to that point of the 10 cents out of the dollar. How can you be fair to farmers when they're getting 10 cents out of the dollar, and really it's the people who are between the farmer and the retailer that control the market, and they're the ones who make the profit no matter if the produce sells or not. So really, if we really want to look at it as a pure economics, if we were to go to the high efficiency growing and the traditional growing and get our food production back within the country, we create thousands, tens of thousands of jobs. And then not only that, but when we buy produce from other countries, that money, just like oil, leaves our economy. It's now helping some other country. It's great to help all the other countries, but let's set up farms there. Let's not import it. So in all reality, this is one of the biggest industries that could turn our economy around by just getting more efficient in the way we grow our food and bring those jobs and the economics of buying it back to our own country.
If I can jump in here, I mentioned before the collaboration. I love the fact that earlier Colin talked about the 2 to 3 jobs that are created. With VermiSoks, there's so much that's available there. Just as an example is the science. So just last weekend, as a matter of fact, I finally got a hold of some professors from Arizona State University in their School of Sustainability. And they came out and they were so excited by the good science that can now be done through the virtuous cycle. There is so much we don't know yet. To be honest with you, a lot of it was just observation and intuition. But how the earthworms do what they do, I have no idea. The study of earthworms, oligochaetology, some scientist needs to really, really develop that out some more. Soil science, a huge one. Because in our particular model, unlike traditional agriculture in which the crop is growing, the nutrients are sucked out of the soil, the earthworm activity is actually putting in nutrients faster than the plants can actually take it out. So we actually have a quality soil product at the end, in addition to the harvest of the crop. The quality of that soil, it's literally off the charts. We've sent it off, had it cultured for microorganisms as well as for NPK. And of course, the investors during their due diligence process are like, how can you improve the quality of the soil? And I'm like, improve it more than off the charts? I don't know. So there's science to be done there as well. There's a huge friggin' opportunity all the way around, and I'm echoing what Dan's saying about all of that. You know, we're talking about jobs in America right now. Food and food production and food consumption, food marketing, chefs. Good Lord, chefs, and raw food chefs especially. There's mad crazy jobs to be had if you have the guts to go after it and see that there's an opportunity and join in with the other people that are already in this space. It's huge.
Right. Well, I think it's actually, we've run a little long, but for good reason. So we're going to not do Q&A, but I hope that all of you get a chance to talk to... we can. Oh, okay. I was told Everybody's okay. We're just going to eliminate the break, which I think is a great idea because, quite honestly, there's so much knowledge up here on the stage that I would love to invite everybody in the audience. Anybody? We have a microphone on the both sides of the auditorium to ask questions of our panel. Please.
I'll just go ahead.
Miguel?
Okay.
Speak loud.
This question's for Dan. I was wondering if you could talk about zoning regulations for farms in cities.
Sure. Part of the thing of getting the law passed in San Diego is what we found is back in the 1950s, 50s, 60s, the developers did a really neat thing. They couldn't stop the farmers from farming, but they could limit their retail ability. So if you can't sell it where you're growing it, you've got to still ship it out, plus now the expensive city land, expensive city labor, you basically have crushed the farmer within the city. So really with the regulations, what we were able to do in San Diego County, which is all of San Diego, the city and all the, is to actually get them to recognize that. So they could put the retail component back on the books as well as open up the amount of space and the zoning areas in which we could actually farm. Did that answer your question? Or?
Yeah, do you have
That's just San Diego County, but I'm now starting to talk to some of the folks in LA and also in Orange County.
I guess this question is probably best suited to Casey, but it's just general. Interested to hear your thoughts. It's really great that we're starting to be able to compete on high-value crops, like tomatoes and greens and berries in urban agriculture. But most of the world's calories comes from a few central grain crops, corn, wheat, soybeans, rice. And I'm wondering if you guys see any potential to be disruptive in the production of those grains in the future, and how we might do that.
Well, that's that's a difference from what we're doing. We're actually growing vegetables, and the greens and those things that are grown out in fields are they're not really conducive to greenhouses or that higher kind of production. I imagine there's a lot of other things that can be done to enhance what productivity of those of farms actually become. I mean, you've seen where America's come in the last 100 years. They get 10 times as much corn off an acre of land today than they did. I believe it's like 50 years. So there has been a lot of enhancements on the field side, but greenhouses and a lot of field products, there's not one thing that's going to answer everything. And I'm not a grain farmer or any of those other things you're talking about. So I'm probably not very well qualified to answer that.
I'd like to jump in and offer something here. So food's great, and I always talk about food because, when you're at a conference like this, it makes sense. But there are a lot of other value-added crops. Most of the time, farmers have to make a choice about what they plant because they have a finite amount of land. That old saying, buy land, they're not making it anymore. VermiSoks is making land now. With our platform, we can turn parking lots into productive growing spaces, and so especially when you're looking at organic agriculture, you're also looking at companion planting. So you're looking at the diversity of the crop. So there's floral spaces. We also have a lot of we're big on tourism. All throughout Scottsdale, we have a number of hotel resorts, and they all seem to have spas, and each spa is looking to differentiate themselves in some way. So this is a space where you can, for instance, use the VermiSoks growing platform to grow lavenders and mints and other type of floral crops in order to produce the basic ingredients for massage oils and soaps and lotions. And what's really fun about it, and what I'd love to see the loop close in on, is to be able to use that resort's waste, put it through the VermiSoks cycle, have it grow a lavender that actually creates a soap that has a signature scent for just that hotel that comes right back. I mean, I think that's just a really great story. So when we're talking about diversity and looking at other crops, we have grown cotton in VermiSoks, and the idea behind that is that eventually I'd have some grower or growers growing this organic cotton that's not just being used for clothing, but the mesh tube would actually be cotton now instead of the photodegradable polyurethane, polyethylene. Poly something, I don't know. It's oil. It's bad. I'd love it to be organic cotton, and so in that case, the VermiSoks would essentially be growing itself. And what's the other great thing that I'll say about Phoenix, contrary to what you hear about it, there are some really great year-round opportunities for growing. We are growing in the winter. The traditional winter, and during the summer now with VermiSoks, we have the ability to grow then too. So there's huge opportunities for different crops at different times of the year.
Do we have other questions? Gentleman in the back?
This is for all of these panelists and during the day, other panelists. Could you address how what you're doing is reducing the risks for investors, making it more attractive so that an investor doesn't have to deal with something that you've read in a novel about catastrophic crop failure, all those issues that have come up in the past and made agriculture less appealing to the to the removed investor. So if you could just talk about how what you're doing reduces risk for outside investors.
Sure.
Thaddeus? Or?
So I would say the main thing our company is doing is we're cultivating relationships with hundreds of thousands of individuals, and you get dumped one individual at a time. And so if that's just one box as opposed to one huge customer, it really diversifies our risk, and we know that we have all of our products sold, and if our customers are going to disappear, it's going to be a trend that's going to happen over years, as opposed to the current model, which is you lose a big buyer and you're kind of out of it overnight potentially.
Sure, and for our model, the way we reduce risk for the investors is kind of multiple fold. One, we're the entire supply chain. We're the farmer, we're the distributor, we're the retailer. So really, we don't have to worry about anything within the supply chain breaking down. Also, for food traceability, which is becoming a huge issue in the industry, we grow it right where we're selling it. So, okay, if you had an issue, which we wouldn't because we're above ground and we are growing practices, but if you had any issue, you could trace it back from the place who bought it directly to right there within the neighborhood. So that also. And then also we're using greenhouses and high efficiency systems that take away a lot of Mother Nature's, the bugs are really hot or really cold. So that also reduces it. So those are some of the facets of reducing the risk.
Something I'll throw in there, integrated into the VermiSoks growing platform is farmers insurance. And that is no matter, even if the entire crop failed, the value of the soil at the end is so significant that it can actually pay for the platform. So that's how we're reducing the risk for investors, one of the ways.
That's great. Casey?
I would say from the greenhouse perspective, and what we do is we grow year round, and we can almost forecast our production plus or minus 10% every week. How do we do this? Is because we are indoors. Sometimes we refer to ourselves as growing in the great indoors because you do a lot of prevention. You use insect screens to keep the bugs out. We have pressurized greenhouses. Yeah. We mitigate a lot of potential diseases. A lot of diseases are caused by incorrect kind of climates, too high humidities or anything else. If you're growing tomatoes in Florida, guess what? You're going to be using a lot of fungicides because tomatoes don't like growing in the tropics. I would say that, though, from a banker's perspective, our biggest risk is the regulatory environment. And you know what? That should have been on the presidential debate because I think that's the #1 issue in America today.
We have time for one last question. We'll go from this side.
I think the question mainly for Casey and your model. It sounds so good, highly productive, low use of resources, everything. Why isn't every vegetable farmer doing this in some way? Maybe it doesn't have to be as high-tech of a greenhouse operation as you have. They could build up to it, but it just seems so logical to be high productive, or with Dan, with your models. Why doesn't everybody do it? Is it just habit of being a farmer?
Well, I guess first thing I would say there's a lot of people starting to do it. There's a lot of greenhouses in Canada. Why? Because it's a lot easier to build up there. But where the biggest growth in greenhouses has been, or greenhouse replicated stuff, has been in Mexico. If you go in the store today, 9 times out of 10, you're going to go out and buy a tomato, they're going to be Mexican. And why? Because you can build there without permits, because there's very little pesticide regulation, almost none. And, there's no labor laws. They pay 1/10 of the wages we do, or even less. And they have complete free access to the American consumer. So those are our challenges. But we need to be a lot better. So we'll stand up to those things, but one thing is we need government help. Not in a financial perspective, but just from regulatory relief.
And then also we're in an in-between. There's the thousands of acres, and then there's the mom and pop and the smaller farmers. So usually smaller farmers, because of the way our system's set up and how they're rewarded, they don't have $1 million an acre to go and do something new. They have capital expenses in their farming equipment and how they're set up at this point. So to continue that operation and go raise another $1 million per acre is almost prohibitive. So for the big corporations, we're not even on the radar. They're not going to go do an acre or two here and there. It's not worth their while. But for the smaller, they don't quite have the capital. So it's also kind of that new in-between market of trying to get that going. So that's part of it also.
Great. Well, thank you, guys. I don't want to run over. There's great questions. Hopefully everybody gets a chance to talk with our panelists throughout the day before they have to go off and deal with the serpent of regulation and the vagaries of farming. I'd like to take an opportunity to thank our panelists once again. Thank you very much for being here.